Hello, Nacho here again. Today I'm going to be doing the reading for Unfrantic Fanfic 4, Viva La Vida. Fun fact about this one was actually written in between the first one and the second one, along with its sequel also being written in that time frame. I didn't release it for a while because of Kool-Aid Ocean coming out and all that jazz. But yeah, now it's here, and let's get going from where the Wiggler's last stand left off. Unfrantic Fanfic number 4, Viva La Vida. Late night on the riverfront of Toledo, Ohio, the house of the Rising Sun Casino was having somewhat of a slow night. The bartenders had stopped serving alcohol at midnight, and all but the most dedicated gamblers had gone home to recover from their losses. Many employees had either followed them home, or gone to their personal quarters in-house. From the penthouse suite of the casino's quarters, Genetwo looked out over the city from where he laid in his bed. Normally, spending the entire day in bed would be unbecoming of a crime boss, but upon his return from Egypt the night prior, he was afflicted with a terrible sickness. He knew the cause of said sickness at least, being the stand arrow that was currently in the possession of the Wiggler. However, throughout all of his research on stands, he had never heard of someone deliberately chosen by the arrow whose body reacted so violently to the virus. Most recipients would have either recovered and gained their stand by now, or simply be claimed by the virus. Perhaps it was because he wasn't from this universe, or perhaps it was because of his unique anatomy as a clone of another Pokemon. Still, he felt like he had been on the verge of death for nearly an entire day at this point. The other members of his syndicate doted on him when they weren't attending to their typical duties, despite him not asking them to. While he appreciated the help, it still didn't do much to ease the searing pain brought on by the foreign virus coursing through his body. As he stared out at the lights of the city in front of him, he felt himself fading in and out of consciousness. Whether this was the Sandman finally deciding he had suffered enough to get some rest, or Death deciding that he had failed in this trial, he couldn't exactly tell. All he knew was that the promise of his suffering being put on hold, either permanently or temporarily, was extremely appealing. After a small amount of internal debate, he fully gave in to the temptation and drifted off. He opened his eyes to find himself in a familiar place. Some time ago, when he had a free week, he traveled to this world's version of Naples, Italy. Since this was the first alternate world he'd been to before, he sought to see if he could find a parallel version of his father. Not being able to control himself in the memory, Genetwo began strolling down a narrow street made of stones. He kept his hands in his pockets and tried to look straight ahead, pondering over where he could find any hints to his father. As he was walking, though, another man was strolling down the alley with blue swirly hair and distinct red glasses. Not noticing him, the pair's shoulders collided. Genetwo quickly turned to apologize but was cut off by the man.
"Watch where you're going, jackass!"
Genetwo couldn't say he didn't expect this sort of response, but still tried to be polite.
Sorry, man, I didn't mean to hurt you. Are you alright?"
For a split second, Genetwo saw a flash of white armor appear around the man, but it quickly dissipated. He glared at Genetwo angrily before shouting again.
"No! I'm not alright! I'm not hurt, but I'm fucking pissed off! The only thing that's gonna calm me down is kicking your ass!"
A cold aura surrounded him as he charged at Genetwo. Without much thought, Genetwo sighed and launched a shadow ball into his chest. The man flew back into a wall, creating a crater where he landed. Scoffing at the pitiful display, Genetwo turned around and started walking away. Unlike the original memory, though, a scene ran through his mind of the same man in the white armor. Here, he was chasing someone wearing glasses through their home, before tripping and impaling himself on a memory card. Mentally, Genetwo shuddered, and his former self continued walking forward onto another street. As he stepped onto the next street, he encountered a me with a strange face. For a split second, he saw a figure behind said me, a buff man wielding a club that looked like a flexing arm. He had the state of Pennsylvania shittily drawn on his chest. Before he could ask any questions, the figure disappeared and the me looked up at him.
"Hello, I am Lonk from Pennsylvania. I am looking for a man named Bruno Bucciarati. Have you seen him?"
The name sent shivers through his spine as memories of his father's tales came back to him. Bruno, Wielder of the stand's sticky fingers, had been one of his father's closest confidants during his rise to power. He was here, it was almost certain that his father was. Still, something seemed slightly off about the strange me. I have not seen him. Why do you ask? The me responded quite bluntly.
I have orders to fight and kill him and his group.
Genetwo could barely believe that the supposed assassin would reveal his plan so easily. If that was the case, he must be confident he could actually defeat Bucciarati. Defiantly, the Pokemon stepped towards him. If that's the case, I cannot let you continue. I need to find him, though I won't tell the likes of you why. 2 shadow balls formed in his hands as his sword began levitating off of his back. Lonk from Pennsylvania stared ahead blankly.
Then you have chosen death.
He reached into his pocket and drew out a Wiimote. Genetwo seemed a little confused until he swung it towards him. He dropped his shadow balls and brought up his blade on pure instinct alone, his psychic power warning him of a strike from that direction. Sure enough, his blade clashed with an invisible one. Even though he could not see his foe's weapon, he knew what it was at this moment. So this is the power of a stand. Though he had heard much about them, up until now he had never faced a stand user in battle. Using his psychic power, he was at least able to tell the rough location of Lonk's stand enough to defend himself. Lonk began swinging his Wiimote wildly, and his stand began repeatedly slashing and swinging at his foe. Genetwo was barely able to keep up, straining as his sword repeatedly clashed with his foes. To the point where he couldn't even control it psychically anymore, instead having to grip it with both hands to brace himself to block each blow. An idea came to his mind as he started to back away, letting Lonk advance upon him and keep the offensive advantage. The me took advantage of this, continuing to hack and slash wildly with his remote as his stand did the same. After a few steps backwards, Genetwo suddenly teleported behind the me and reached a hand out. Due to the me's small size, it didn't take him much effort to lift him into the air. He began wiggling his fingers as Lonk began to rapidly spin around midair. Very quickly, the me became extremely disoriented as Genetwo launched him into a wall. Not wanting to take any chances, Genetwo began booking it in the opposite direction as he tried to escape the stand user's view. While he was worried about Bruno, he knew that the mafioso could handle himself. Sure enough, another vision came to mind, similar to the one from before. In this one, he witnessed the stand's sticky fingers pummeling Lonk repeatedly before launching him skyward, where he presumably fell to his demise. Shortly after running away, Genetwo awoke with a start. The memory was still fresh on his mind as he jolted up in bed. He glanced around, trying to take in the familiar room around him to ease his intense nerves. However, the sudden movement caused the virus to rack his body with pain once more, forcing him to lay back down and cry out in pain. His gaze was drawn back to the window, where the lights of the city were still shining, defiantly steadfast against the night sky. Slightly more at ease, he began to drift back to sleep. He awoke once more in a gray void, feeling dazed and confused. He recognized this memory quite well, especially once the odd assortment of people around him began to come into view. This was one of his first memories in this world, or at least one of his first memories involving it. His eyes were laid on the Wiggler and Mikey Neptune, both of whom were staring down a figure cloaked in shadow, standing in front of a set of monitors. Almost as if on cue, the figure turned around. "Greetings. My name is Dr. William Donald Gaster." The man spoke as memories of his time in the playroom flooded through his mind. Once again, he was face to face with the man who speaks in hands. Something was different, though, as he continued to see flashes of a green figure behind him. The color of said figure seemed to be somewhat faded, as if it was barely holding on to his identity. From then on, the rest of the scene played out like normal, as he and the rest of his crew, and the rest of his new friends, proceeded to beat the shit out of Dr. Gaster. Nothing seemed significantly different until the end, where Lars Mars began further beating the crap out of the already defeated doctor. There, another vision entered his mind, as he watched a younger and healthier-looking version of the Doctor strolling on a catwalk over a chasm filled with energy. A small white monster was nearby, day trading on his phone as he was eating a banana. He finished and discarded a peel absent-mindedly as the Doctor walked past, causing him to slip on it and careen off the catwalk. Gaster fell into the sea of energy, reaching out for help but finding none as he was shattered across time and space. Once more, Genetwo woke up with fear evident on his face. This time, he didn't jolt out of bed as he knew the pain that it would cause. The Doctor's apparent death played over and over again in the back of his mind. He didn't understand why or how he was receiving these visions of the fates of those he had met before, especially people who he had never really known all that well. Genetwo glanced at his hand, which was shaking violently along with the rest of his body. He didn't know whether it was due to his stress, the illness, or even both. So many questions lingered on his mind as he once again glanced at the skyline of the city of Toledo, focusing on it in an attempt to ground himself. Feeling a sense of peace begin to wash over him, he started to drift back to sleep. His eyes opened again as he found himself in a completely dark void, devoid of any sort of light. A feeling of déjà vu came over him as he found that he could finally control his own movements, and wasn't forced any longer to be a passive observer of his past. After inspecting his surroundings, he quickly spotted a familiar face standing not far from him. "Dad?" Clad in a long lavender coat and a wide-brimmed fedora of a similar color, the man turned on a dime. He was quite well dressed and sported a neatly trimmed mustache and goatee that had dyed black along with the rest of his hair. Under the trench coat, he was dressed in rather fancy attire, with gold and lavender accents around it. Behind him, a golden figure manifested while striking an odd pose. "It is a pleasure to see you again, my son." Giovanni Brando slowly approached his son's son, golden experience walking behind him. Genetwo didn't wait another second to hug him tightly, having not met with him in nearly a decade at this point. "Father, it's really you. How did you get here?" "It's complicated," he stated plainly as he hugged back, "but my presence is necessary, especially as your own stand develops. You know I would never miss an opportunity like this, despite my current state." Tears welled up in Genetwo's eyes as he let go of his father. "So I am developing a stand after all. Here I thought this virus was going to finally do me in." Solemnly, Giovanni nodded. "Indeed, and a rather powerful one at that. Your power is somewhat complicated, but it is one of the strongest stands I have ever witnessed. Yours is a stand with near unlimited potential, with the power to preserve and copy the stands of those you've met before who have met unfortunate fates." Genetwo flashed back to the other stands he had seen that night, their names coming to him as he processed this information. White Album, Ram Ranch, and O Green World, all of which would be under his control upon his awakening. It reminded him all too much of his father's own search for power by claiming the strength of his world sea crystals, a mistake he was keen not to repeat. "Is that really to become my stand ability?" he said with a nervous expression. "I'm not looking to become as powerful as you, or my grandfather. You should know by now that I don't have any intentions of ruling over others." Giovanni laughed to himself as he gave his son a warm smile. "I understand. Though you have definitely carved out a sizable world for yourself through institutions such as your casinos. I'm honestly quite proud of how much you've managed to game the system. Still, you should understand that it is the nature of a Brando to seek and shore up as much power as possible. That is what fate has decided our role is in the story of life. Despite this, it is simply up to you how you will use this gift of great power." Looking down at his hands, visions started dancing through his mind of his friends, the other members of his organization who had helped him forge a criminal empire through business acumen rather than brute force. He looked back up at his father and his stand with determination in his eyes. "I'm not going to run around the world and collect stands or anything. I'll simply use what's given to me to its advantage." A smile crossed Giovanni's face. That's what I expected you to say. Luckily for you, your stand will not allow you to do such a thing. You can only collect a stand as long as you weren't directly involved in the eventual fate of the user. Still, I trust you to carry on the Brando legacy in your own way, even if you never come to rule your world or this one. As he spoke, his stand silently left his side and began walking towards Genetwo. It took its place at his side, glancing towards him with a blank expression. As such, the final stand you will be gifted with tonight is my own golden experience. You won't be able to obtain the power of Requiem as I did, but its ability still should prove useful. Genetwo met the gaze of his father's stand, confidently admiring the ability that was now his own. So, I assume you'll be heading out soon? He said as he turned back to his father. I'm admittedly going to miss you. I will fade from your mind shortly, and of course I'll miss your presence all the same. Still, you are needed in the waking world. Know that as long as you utilize the power of my stand, that you'll always have a piece of me with you. Giovanni tipped his hat and smiled. Farewell, my son. I know whatever you do next will certainly make me proud. With that, he turned around and began walking off into the darkness. As he began to fade from view, light began to flood back into Genetwo's vision as he fully woke up. As he awoke, he felt that the pain brought on by the virus had finally left him fully. His strength returning to him, he pushed aside the covers and sat up in bed. It barely took any time at all for him to smell smoke wafting from downstairs. Thinking that someone likely burnt something in the staff kitchen, he sighed and pushed himself up. He barely made it to the door when Thrash Fist threw open the door to his room, looking quite panicked and somewhat beat up and singed. Jane! I need help! A look of shock came over the Mewtwo's face as he looked over the crocodile's disheveled appearance. It was clear he lost the fight again, but the fact that he was coming to him for aid showed the situation was a bit more dire than usual. What's going on? Are you hurt? How are the others? Thrash Fist seemed to be an equal amount pissed and frightened, but some of that could have been him trying to look tough. Some military-looking cunt tried asking me some questions about putting our money in washing machines. I told her to fuck off, and when she didn't, I tried to kick her shit in. But she pulled out some fire sword thingies and kicked my ass! She's on the main floor, beating up the others! Without asking any further questions, Genetwo hastily put on a bathrobe and rushed downstairs. He hadn't even remembered to grab his sword as he flew down a nearby stairwell, the smell of smoke growing stronger as he rushed to the main floor. Once he made it down, he flung open the door to find the entire area filled with blue flame. Surprisingly, it didn't seem to be spreading whatsoever, but showed no signs of dying down either. He levitated above the flames, staring down at the one responsible. In the center of the large room, a woman wearing an extremely ornate military uniform with golden accents was lashing out at a couple of the guards with a pair of whip swords that glowed with bright blue flame. Behind her, a taller woman with an ornate dress and hair made of the same blue flame stood with her hands outstretched, a tether of blue energy connecting the two of them. Genetwo rushed in, psychically lifting his guards out of the way as he took their place. He gritted his teeth as he angrily stared her down. Who the hell do you think you are? The woman stared at him with a stoic impression, almost as if he was sizing her up. I am Morag, Special Inquisitor of the Empire of Ardain. She held one of her swords towards the Pokemon, as the whip portion of the sword reunited back into a solid blade. I assume you must be Genetwo Brando, leader of Team Genesis. You and your organization stand accused of using our nation's banks to launder money for an unknown purpose. I came searching for answers, only to be met with hostility. I'm sorry if our bouncer's attitude didn't meet your standards, but that's no reason to burn the place to the ground. Genetwo responded as he kept his gaze on her. I can assure you we've done no such thing, especially not in your borders. Call off your stand and we can talk this out like reasonable adults. The figure behind her stepped forward, holding her hands together gracefully. My name is Bridget, And I am not a stand criminal. I am what is known as a blade. Though we share commonalities with stands, only us rare blades can interact with stands due to our connection to our user's soul. Genetwo rolled his eyes at her short speech. Thanks for the lore dump. I'll be sure to remember it once both of you are escorted out. Morag's eyes narrowed. Hang on. None of our intel on you has given any indication that you're a stand user. If you've been hiding that, that's all the more reason to suspect you're hiding more information about what you've been doing through our banks. Lady, I've never even heard of your damn kingdom until 20 seconds ago. I only developed a stand tonight. It's not like I'm hiding some big fucking paper trail in the basement. By now, he was getting quite pissed, which only made Morag more suspicious. Without much of a warning, she started to lash her whip swords at him. Genetwo backed up, attempting to reach back and grab his sword, only to find he left it in his room. He didn't have his Psychium Z crystal with him either. All he could do to defend himself from Morag was hold up a psychic shield, and even that strained under the intense strength from her weapon's lashes. After taking about a dozen hits, his shield broke and he was rendered temporarily defenseless. He braced himself for searing pain as the Inquisitor advanced, only to watch something begin to manifest in front of him. It was a mechanical-looking eyeball about the size of his head with 6 wings on his side. It was a mechanical-looking eyeball about the size of its head with 6 wings on its sides. It was nearly fully covered in a shade of pale white, with the only splotch of color being the striking green of its iris. A name came to mind as he stood back up, gritting his teeth as he remembered one of his past battles. Viva la Vida! Ram Ranch! He felt a remote manifest in his hand, but he quickly began to swing around. Before any of Morag's further strikes could reach him, the angel-like stand in front of him morphed into the stand of the Pennsylvanian he fought a while ago, began swinging its sword as Genetwo swung the remote, knocking away the strikes. Morag's eyes narrowed as she backed off slightly. So that's your stand. Rather powerful one, it seems. No matter. I have my orders to take you in, and I will follow them to the letter. She reunited both her blades, running at Ram Ranch with Bridget falling behind her. The walls of flame began to close in behind Genetwo. In a panic, he began to swing faster, but found that when up close, Morag's training and speed was enough to effectively counter his unsophisticated strikes. Tragedy struck when he realized that he didn't have the wrist strap on, leading to him launching the Wiimote and his stand directly into the wall of fire. They both went straight through, causing him to wince as he felt the searing heat. With no stand in the way to stop her, Morag continued her approach. Thinking fast to try and come up with a plan, he looked over the flames to see a set of craps tables, both with green surfaces. Ram Ranch shifted back into Viva la Vida's base form, which stared down Genetwo. A set of information entered his mind, as if his stand itself was trying to tell him what to do. Viva la Vida! Oh, green world! As he shouted, his stand shifted once more into a different humanoid form, which looked rather green. He piloted the stand towards the craps tables, and it began to suck the green from the set of tables. As it did so, Morag tried lashing out at it again in an attempt to stop it, but it managed to shift back into its default state and fly over the flame before shifting back into a green world. It started spawning a couple craps tables, which formed a defensive wall between Morag and Genetwo. Bridget looked slightly concerned, but wasn't able to address anything with her driver before Genetwo shouted out once more, "Viva la Vida! Golden experience!" Behind his makeshift barrier, O Greenworld morphed into the form of his father's stand. Unlike the previous two, Genetwo knew the extent of its power quite well. "Duma, Duma, 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 Duma!" he screamed loudly as his stand punched each of the craps tables. Each of them transformed into a large clump of thorns that the punches sent flying towards Morag. For the first time in the fight, her stoic expression left her face as she tried to slash through the vines in a panic. As she did so, the vines burnt up due to the raging flames her blades possessed. Seconds later, though, she felt a searing pain rip through her, as the damage from her attack was reflected back onto her. Her stance faltered as she fell to the ground. Trying to fight the pain, Bridget quickly went over to try and aid her. Viva la Vida shifted back to normal, staring at Genetwo as it transferred more information about its various forms to him. An idea came to mind as he processed the power of his final ability, the stand of the man he had briefly bumped into. Viva la Vida! White Album! His stand flew at him and began covering his body. It solidified into a sort of armor, forming ice skates on his feet and a visor over his face. He started to dash towards Morag, keeping a distance from her as he began skating along the wall of fire. He held out a hand against the wall of flame, rapidly cooling it and causing the fire to dissipate. With Morag still unable to stand, she didn't have a way to relight the flames. The Inquisitor began to stand up again as she noticed that most of her flames had vanished, and gestured to Bridget to try and relight them. Before she could do so, Genetwo rushed at the pair from behind and grabbed Bridget's shoulder. Ice began to coat her as he attempted to freeze her solid, however it just as quickly melted. Genetwo slid back, panicked that either the blade or her driver would attempt to attack him. As the ice melted, however, Bridget became completely soaked, causing the flames on her head to go out. Morag looked back in shock as her swords extinguished as well. His eyes widening as he realized what to do. He reached his hand out towards the wall and psychically pulled the fire alarm. The building's fire sprinklers came on and began to drench Morag even further. Taking a deep breath, Genetwo called off Viva la Vida and began to approach Morag with a stern look on his face. So this is your blade's weakness. You can only use your flames if you're completely dry. To be brutally honest, I didn't even know if freezing you would work. I'm pretty lucky I managed to even catch you off guard. Morag groaned as she clutched her side, still trying to overcome her technically self-inflicted wounds. Clever. Real clever. She righted herself, attempting to appear professional while still nursing her wounds. At least you're honest, though, and not just about that. I can see clearly now that you aren't hiding your stand from us. I had a hunch when you lost control of it earlier, but if you truly didn't know how your stand's own freezing ability works, then it must still be new. Still, it's incredibly powerful, though that alone didn't win our fight. Bridget nodded along, standing attentively next to her driver. I also noticed it seemed like your stand was pausing every now and again to look at you, almost like it was trying to communicate. That, and for someone who reportedly fights with a sword, your footwork is rather sloppy. A disapproving look crossed his face. Thanks for the heads up. Still, I wasn't lying about the money laundering. I probably shouldn't tell someone like you this, but our organization does, in fact, pass money around like that on occasion. However, if your info on me is as good as you'd claim, you know we're not from this world. This casino is only a branch of our operation, so we'd have little reason to keep any dirty money here, and even less reason to move it through a country that doesn't exist in our world. Sheathing her swords, Morag moved a hand up to her chin as she considered this. Still, we found records linked to your organization and several others that were involved in laundering. You're only the first we've investigated out of the lot. Stepping in front of the two, Bridget glanced at both before speaking. If you'd allow me to offer an explanation, perhaps all three of us had been played. All we had to go off of from those banking records was your organization's name, along with the names of a few others. If someone wanted to cover their tracks with that sort of thing, all they'd need to do was register under your name, provided your name hadn't already been in the system. With how remote the Cloud Sea of Allrest is compared to the rest of the world, it's unlikely that they would have had to worry about that. Simply put, it's possible you've been framed. Genetwo nodded along as she spoke. More than possible. I'd say that's the truth. I can't think of who I would have pissed off enough to frame me for something like that, though. Still, if you're tracking down whatever rat bastard did this, I'm more than happy to help, even if that means going halfway around the world to find them. With a quick flourish, Morag pulled out a communicator. Understood. We've got an airship docked nearby. I'll give the word to my men to bring it here. Grab whatever you might need for the coming fight. I'd imagine it'd be a while until you get back here. As she began to talk to her men, Genetwo went back upstairs to get more properly dressed. He had nearly forgotten that he was still only wearing his bathrobe. As he entered his room, he found Thrash Fist hiding under his bed. "Is the scary bitch gone?" he said in a panicked tone. He started to take off his bathrobe as he approached his closet. No, but we have managed to work things out. I'm going to be out of town for a while on some business. While I'm gone, I'm leaving you in charge. As he spoke, he began putting on a hoodie and some loose-fitting pants, something he could easily move in. Thrash Fist's eyes lit up as he scampered out from under the bed.
You really mean it? You're giving me the keys to the kingdom?
He skittered over to Genetwo with an excited look on his face.
I can turn this joint into my beautiful Thrashtopia?
Genetwo chuckled and shook his head. The name's staying the same. I like it how it is. Still, you've got control over the casino until I get back. If you do a good enough job of cleaning up the place after the fight downstairs, I'll see what I can do about making Thrashtopia a thing in this world, too. If anything goes wrong, call Dewey and ask him to help out. He put his sword on his back and grabbed the Psyche Z pendant from his bedside table. Once he had put the pendant on, he walked over to the nearby window. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see Thrash Fist celebrating in the corner. He stared out at the lights of Toledo once more, watching as an airship flew closer and closer to the casino's roof. After watching it dock, he glanced down at the Psyche Z pendant, thinking about the great power he now held. With Thrash Fist now still jumping for joy near his closet, he stepped out of his room and began climbing upstairs towards the roofs. There, Morag and Bridget were waiting. We're waiting for him. Soldiers saluting them as the three of them climbed aboard and the ship took off for parts unknown to the Pokemon. Still, he knew that somehow, some way, he would return to the lights of Toledo. He would always return for his team. He would always return for his family. And that's the end of Unfrantic Fanfic 4.